Greetings, math friends. Today we're taking a look at yet another lesson around the idea of proportionality, proportional relationships, and the constant of proportionality. So let's take a look at this very first question. It says that you work at Home Depot and Mr. Eaton needs to buy paint for his classroom. He wants you to mix Panther school colors, yellow and blue, to make a special green color. The special green requires 3 cups of yellow paint per cup of blue paint. So what does that look like? Let's see. Then you would need 3 cups of yellow to 1 cup blue. And what do we have here? Hopefully you recognize that what we have in this case is a very special case of a unit rate. Right? Here is our unit rate. Because, as you can see, we have 1 in the denominator and we have a different number in the numerator, and that makes our unit rate. And as we have talked about before, a unit rate is just another name for the constant, the constant of proportionality, otherwise known by the variable k. So the unit rate is k. And what's the unit rate here? Well, let's find out what that unit rate is. It is, well, what is 3 divided by 1? Remember, here's the deal. When we look at this table, the amount of yellow paint that you need completely depends on how much blue paint you're going to need. So, like, for example, if you had 1 cup of blue paint, you would need 3 cups of yellow paint. So this is our dependent variable, the yellow cups of paint, and the cups of blue paint is our independent variable. It is our input. And so when we have that, if yellow is the y and blue is the x, y divided by x, it gives us our constant of proportionality. Y divided by x equals our constant of proportionality. And in this case, that's 3 divided by 1, which is 3. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 3 is our constant of proportionality. Now, if you have 2 cups of blue paint, how many cups of yellow paint would that be? Well, let's see. When we went from 1 cup of blue paint, we multiply that times 3 to get 3 cups of yellow paint. If we have 2 cups of blue paint, we multiply that times our constant of proportionality, 3, and that gives us 6 cups of yellow paint. If you have 3 cups of blue, you multiply that by the constant of proportionality, and 3 times 3 is 9. You would need 9 cups of yellow paint. If you had 4 cups of blue paint, you would multiply that times 3, the constant of proportionality, and 4 times 3 is 12. Well, that's all great and wonderful, but do we really need to create a table for every possible combination? No, the answer is no, we don't need to. We can use a variable, and we're going to use the variable x to represent the cups of blue paint. And if you follow the pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, x, then this would be x times 3. And what is x times 3? Well, anytime you multiply a variable times a number, it's always going to be that you put the number in front, the coefficient in front, and then the variable second. So x times 3 is 3x. So the reason that is important is because now the number of cups of yellow paint can be figured out by simply taking the number of cups of blue paint and multiplying by 3. 3x. So that's a wonderful thing. We found the constant of proportionality. It was 3. Remember, because y divided by x equals k, and we had 3 over 1, that equals 3. And if we take each one of these numbers and we divide the y by the x, you will get 3 every time. And so now we can write an algebraic rule, which is just another word for an equation. Y equals 3 times x. And that will always tell you how much yellow paint you'll need based on how much blue paint you have. All right, let's move to the second question. The constant of proportionality, or K, is the number portion of the unit rate. Analyze the graphs below to solve the following questions. Okay, well, how can we identify the constant of proportionality in a graph? Well, let's look at a graph. Now, we know that these graphs are proportional relationships because, first of all, the line is a straight line in each case, and in each case, that line passes through the origin at 0, 0, here and here. But how can we identify the constant of proportionality just by looking at the graph? Well, the same way that you would if you were looking at a table. When you're trying to find the constant of proportionality, remember, the constant of proportionality can always be found by dividing y by x. Y divided by x will always give you the constant of proportionality. If we look at our first graph, and we take a look at one of the points on the graph, and here it is. Here's one point on our graph, and its point is 1, 2. So remember, they always come in XY pairs. XY pairs. So when you look at an ordered pair, the X always comes first. When we look at this one, X and Y, if we divide Y by X, well, the Y is 2, the X is 1, and what's 2 divided by 1? 2. What's the constant of proportionality? 2. And that's why this graph, when you see the equation for it, y equals 2x, you see that 2 in there? You see that? Do you see that 2? That 2 is the constant of proportionality, and you can tell just by looking at the graph. And, by looking at the equation. So remember, from a graph, if you know the coordinates of one of those points, the xy pair, when you divide y by x, you can find the constant of proportionality. Well, what's the constant of proportionality in this graph? Well, let's see. Here's our xy pair for this point right here. Remember, it's an x, comma, y pair. So, our y is 3, our x is 1, and 3 divided by 1 is 3. So the constant of proportionality is 3. Da-da-da. Y divided by x. Okay? Because y divided by x will always equal the constant of proportionality. If it's a proportional relationship, that line is straight and it passes through the origin, as you see here. So how can you identify the constant of proportionality in a graph? Well, there's one way. Always divide y by x, and that will give you your constant of proportionality. But here's the other thing I want you to notice. When you look at this, see how x is 1? What's y? It's 2. What's the constant of proportionality in this one? 2. And look over here. When x is 1, what's the value of y? It's 3. So when x is 1, y is 3. What's the constant of proportionality? 3. So besides just taking any pair of points on a graph and dividing one by the other, you can say that, well, when x is equal to 1, the y value at that point, y is equal to the constant of proportionality in that x, comma, y pair. When x is 1, y is the constant. Huh? How about that? That's beautiful. And how can you identify the constant of proportionality in an algebraic rule? So let me erase this here. When we look at this algebraic rule here, what's the constant of proportionality? Well, we found it to be 2. And look where that 2 is. It's the coefficient of x. Look at our equation for this other one. What's the constant of proportionality? Well, we found it to be 3 when we divided y by x, and look where it is. It's right there next to the x. So it's always going to be the coefficient of x. So, how can you identify the constant of proportionality in an algebraic rule? It's the number that's in front of the x, or the number that's the coefficient of that variable. Okay? So, the constant of proportionality is always going to be the coefficient of x. And what is the coefficient of x? It's the number that's next to the x. Remember to write that down. The coefficient of x is the number that's next to the x. I'm not going to write it, but you better. All right, next question. Here we go. This says the ratio of blue to yellow paint is 1 to 2. And we need to fill out this table with this critical information. Now you'll notice that yellow is no longer the y. It is now the x. And the blue is now the y. So, in order to find the constant of proportionality, we still have to you always have to divide y by x to find the constant of proportionality. So let's find some pairs where we have both of them. Well, here's a spot where we have both of them. Here's another spot where we have both of them. And here's another spot where we have both the y and the x. So let's check those out. Y divided by x. So here, 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, or 1/2, right? And how about this one here? The y is 2, the x is 4. What's 2 divided by 4? 0.5. And how about this one? The y is 3, the x is 6. Remember, it's always y divided by x. 3 divided by 6 is 0.5. Remember, because we always divide top divided by bottom, top divided by bottom, top divided by bottom. And it's 0.5 every time. So what's the constant of proportionality? That's right, 0.5. So now you got to ask yourself, all right, now that we've got this all taken care of, we found the constant of proportionality. So in this case, to get from 2 to 1, we would take 2, we multiply that by 0.5, and that equals 1. 2 times 0.5 is 1. 4 times 0.5 is 2. And 6 times 0.5 is 3. So, what do you suppose 1 times 0.5 is? Well, it had better be 0.5, right? Now you could use your calculator and say, well, okay, what is 3 times 0.5? 3 times 0.5 is 1.5. Here, this empty spot, what's 5 times 0.5? It's 2.5. Now, what are we going to put here? Well, we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all of them times 0.5. What happens when we put an x there? That's correct. We're going to put an x. We're going to multiply x times 0.5. And what will that give us? That's going to give us 0.5x. So the value of y equals 0.5 times x. 0.5x. And that, my friends, is our algebraic rule for this particular combination of paint. How awesome is that? I mean, I am beside myself. I'm so happy about it. We found the constant, right? We found the constant to be 0.5 because we divided y by x. And now we have our algebraic rule. And I also want you to remember that your algebraic rule could look like this. 0.5x equals y. They can be switched on either side of the equal sign, just so you know. All right. Now let's draw this graph and fill out the the information from the table here. So in this case, let's draw some points. When x is 1, y is 0.5. So I'm going to go over here to 1. And I'm going to go, let's see, where would 0.5 be? Well, that's 1, this is 3, this is 5, and 7, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. Make sure you draw your graph and number it. When x is 1, y is 0.5. So I'm going to go halfway up to 1. There's my first point. When x is 2, y is 1. When x is 3, y is 1.5, halfway between 1 and 2. When x is 4, y is 2. When x is 5, y is 2.5. When x is 6, y is 3. Now look at that. Look at all those dots that I've drawn on there. Guess what happens if I connect all those dots? I get a line that runs straight through the origin. A straight line through the origin. That means, what does that mean? That means that we have a proportional relationship because it's a straight line that passes through the origin at 0, 0. Awesome. Just awesome. And so now all we have to do to finish this thing out, now that we've done all this work, is answer this question. What's the constant of proportionality for this table? We found the constant of proportionality for that table. How did we find it? We divided y by x because that will always give us the constant of proportionality. The constant of proportionality. Divide y by x to find it every time. Divide your output by your input. And then what's the algebraic rule? You know what that algebraic rule is. We wrote it up above. Now you have to rewrite it down here. And then the last thing you have to do is answer this question. Explain why. Why is it so important to determine y divided by x? Why is that so important? What do you need to use that for? That's up to you to decide and write that answer down. Make sure to either rewrite the question or restate the question in your answer. Hey, don't forget to have a great day. And don't forget to be awesome.